Good afternoon, everybody. We're just going to give it a few more minutes before we get started, let a few more people to log on. We hope everybody's doing good today and that at least the weather's good where you're at currently.
Let's wait one more minute. I see some people still logging in. So we'll start shortly.
As you guys are coming in, I just want to point out there is a place to send us your questions. So we'll address those throughout, but there is also a chat functionality. So if you just want to, if you can't hear us or something like that, put it in the chat. But if you do have a question for us, put that in the questions portion.
All right, it's 3:01, so let's get this webinar started. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining. My name is Raquel, and I work with the Event App team. I have worked with most of you configuring the CMS and getting your apps live on the stores. Dan was not able to join us today, but I'll guide you through this session with the help of David.
Excellent. And welcome, everybody. David Amajeda's here. I am the account manager working with ECUS in Canada. And sometimes I've worked with some of you guys on the West and even in South America. So I'm glad to be here and be a source for you guys to help you out in these very weird, challenging times.
And good morning, everybody. Just before we get started, I just want to take a quick second to not only welcome all of you to this presentation, but also say thank you. In this time, we hope every single one of you is being safe, staying healthy. Definitely a crazy time in our industry, but I can say it's been very uplifting for us to see the industry come together. I think we're all in this definitely together. We really miss being with a lot of you in person. Unfortunately, had to miss a few events this spring that we were looking forward to. We see some of them happening in the fall. And, we're going to look forward to being with all of you face to face very soon. In the meantime, we're going to have some webinars for you. We've got a handful planned. We've been very busy behind the scenes over the last couple of weeks trying to get prepared for this. We look forward to interacting with you guys as much as possible, especially through these webinars. And I'm going to pass it over to David and Raquel and let them run with the presentation. But again, thank you all very much. And we look forward to talking to you again soon. So I'll pass it over to David and Raquel. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. All right, so if you don't have this app already, the Sporthive Live, you can download it now. I'll give you a minute to do this. There are already some virtual races published on this app, so you can also take a look at them. All right, You can scan the code. It opens in Google Play and the Apple Store. So what we are covering in this webinar is what is virtual racing, your role as a timer, the Sporthive Virtual App, the features, customizable looks, different virtual run platforms, how to use the Sporthive Virtual, some possible applications, and pricing. So what is a virtual race? A virtual race is a race that can be performed at any location at any time, and runners can run on a treadmill at home. There are some even marathoners that run full 42K in their backyards. So the participants, they time it themselves, usually with the help of their watch or an app. So due to the pandemic situation we are living, virtual races have become a popular alternative. There has been an 88% increase in the solo running activities, and we as MyLabs, we would like to support you on getting those events on board. So I'm gonna get a poll question that if you can please answer it. So we're getting some answers in. Most people have some virtual runs and events in their regions. Let's see. We have 87% of votes. Let's see if we get a little bit more. All right. So we asked, are there any upcoming virtual events in your region? And 76% of people said yes, 11% no, and 13% not sure.
So just based on those numbers, Raquel, it seems like a lot of us are having virtual runs as an alternative option as opposed to just canceling the event.
Correct. So what is your role as a timer? This is very important because you are the first line of contact. Racers are looking for an alternative solution to go virtual instead of just canceling the event. They sometimes have already the medals or the shirts, so it is easier for them to go virtual than just refund everything. Timers use their own web form or a third-party solution to collect results. You as timers still handle the data and compile the results for the participants. So you are the engine for this virtual run. And what MyLab supports is the virtual run with the Sporthive Virtual App. So the Sporthive Virtual App is, since we are not having any public events, is just a solution that gives you as organizers and timers a platform to host a virtual race. So it's it can support an unlimited number of participants. It enhances the virtual event experience. You have sponsor value and full control of the app through the event CMS. We are still working in the development team and the support team to get your app and your event published, and any help you might need throughout the build. Live tracking and leaderboards are disabled because there's no live tracking. And we have a lot of experiences with these events, with over 600 events worldwide. Some of the features you have on the Sporthive Virtual App is that you are engaging with the runners, and you can send push notifications. They can submit the time through the app. You can connect to your social media, and you can also take selfies with custom overlays and sponsors in there. The content of the app is also customed by you, and you can insert information about the virtual run. You can add a button to publish the results, and everything on the content you want to add. Okay, here is an example of one app that is already live in the Sporthive Virtual. So if you open the event, you will see an easy way to navigate. It is I'm not sure if you see my mouse, but you have the hamburger menu, which you can customize. This button on the middle of the screen, we call it the CTA button, or call to action. It is linked to your registration page, to your results page, or any important information. You have the push notifications at the top. These are what we call the tiles. So you have your social media channels, you have space for your sponsors, you can insert a statement or instructions on how to do the virtual run. And you can add the weather and the countdown clock.
And if you're trying to follow along, this is the Dubai run in the Sporthive Live app. And just to add some color to what Raquel is guiding us through here, that call to action button lives there at the top and cannot be changed, whereas everything at the bottom is those customizable tiles where you can choose the shape, the size of that tile, and build out that content that you'd like, while those push notifications are those items that are ideally popping up on the runner's screen when they're not in the app, and then they can access the push notifications through the app by clicking the bell at the top right.
And then here are some examples. Like, you can have your custom images in the tiles and dedicated content to the app. For example, I'm not sure if you are able to see, for example, this first app has the different CTA button. It says virtual run results. So you can change the wording to however you want it. There is still some possibility for sponsor impressions because the app is going to get more exposure. So even though it might get hard to get some sponsors right now, but there is still a lot of opportunities you can check. For example, in this one, they have the Garmin logo just as a dedicated sponsored tile. And behind the tile, it redirects you to the Garmin site. You can also have small icons, or also add a sponsor in the selfie. So it gives a lot of exposure opportunities.
And we see Dan there making a guest appearance with Cherry Blossom, which transitioned from the full app with us into a virtual run, as well as a virtual app. And then I believe the second from the right is Mudhen. Is that correct? Where's it, Salming and Tier?
No.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
All right, move along. All right.
Let's see.
So if you want to go to the next slide, Raquel. All right, so just to touch base, something to keep in mind, this is still this is a way that we're making the MyLaps app available to you, and we want to work with you guys to tailor this for your virtual races. Did we suddenly come out with a virtual platform for registration? MyLaps did registration years ago, but it wasn't our specialty. There's a lot of great options out there, so we're still not venturing down that road, but we want to make this as easy for you as possible. So here are some various options you might use. Google Forms is super simple. It may seem too simple, but I think this is one of those cases where you just don't want to overcomplicate it. So using a Google form is just easy. Collect the names of your runners, their times, and have them upload a picture of whatever their, either their Strava page or, even just as simple as a picture of their watch showing the time. There's a little bit of this that does become kind of the honor system. Another option would be Jotform. And then if you are working with a third-party registration platform, a lot of them, you've heard them probably over the last few weeks reach out to you with some options for virtual. So Race Roster, Run Score, Run Sign Up, Race Director have some options there. And then I know Zwift, Strava, Garmin, I mean, your social media is probably blowing up with people that are recording races through those platforms, and you might want to go that route as well. So definitely feel free to reach out to your account managers if you have questions. If you're working with a registration party, feel free to reach out to them, see what they might be able to facilitate for you. And then we have a really good relationship with those guys. So really easy to integrate that platform, create a button so that your runners, your racers can register through the MyLaps virtual app. Right, next slide. Just to give you some options, some timers that we've heard from that have jumped on this virtual from the minute things started shutting down. Nova Timing and Delmo had a conversation, so they actually have a nice platform for people to submit their times that was used for Cherry Blossom. And then I know if out in the Midwest, John Magnuson and Carl have put together a pretty easy to use option as well, with even the option to give you results and certificates for your athletes. And then of course, continuing that communication with post-race emails. They're both on the call. If you haven't spoken with Ed at Nova, Ryan at Delmo, or John and Carl at MTech, definitely reach out to your local account manager, and we'll happily put you in touch. And this is just an example of what people are doing in our network of timers. These are not the only options. I know there's a lot of really smart people on this call and in this network of timers that probably have a bunch of other great solutions. So feel free to talk to your network and find out what the best solution is for you. But these are just two you might want to reach out to. Next. All right, so how to use this Sporthive virtual app. And depending on whether you're a timer or, I know we have some people from different events on this webinar, this is really going to be what the workflow is like, and either working directly with us at MyLaps or working with your timer before you went virtual. This is kind of the steps that you'll want to go through. So you essentially, if you choose to not do results, but simply use the virtual app as a platform to collect data and engage with your athletes, this is going to be your flow. And then later on, I'm going to touch on how to go about the process of also providing results. So first and foremost, you'll work to build the event app. So build out all the customization. To be honest, the only thing that in Sporthive is not customizable is the main icon. So it will live in the Sporthive app. The beauty of it, though, is as you share the information on your website, your social, you can create QR codes, and you can also access direct links so that when your athletes are downloading the app, it will open automatically to your event. And then each time that they go back to your virtual app, it will automatically open up into your event. And then if they want to research, there is an option for them to explore all the events in the world that are using the Sporthive app. But ultimately, yours will be the highlight, especially if they click on a link from you. So at that point, it's just communicating. I would say, just to kind of call someone that communicated a direct link to their app really well was the trials. When they were here in Atlanta, you went to the expo and you saw the QR code everywhere. You could do the same on your events websites. Then the next step is for your runners to run, or if it's a cycling event, ride. They compete in the virtual race. One thing that has been up the discussion here and there has been whether people can submit multiple times. So we're doing a little internal company virtual race, and they've said we can keep trying to beat each other out until the last day. But you might choose to say, okay, well, your first time you submit is the only one that counts. And then after your runners have run, as always is one of our most popular features in the app is selfies and sharing that content. So that's where there is the selfies feature. You saw Dan earlier had used that through the Cherry Blossom app. This is where you encourage your athletes to take in-app selfies. One thing with in-app selfies is you do own the content. So you'll be able to access those later and use those for future marketing or however you'd like to, obviously with their approval and some sort of waiver, but also they can automatically share it to social media. So that's something to consider. And then finally, it's that marketing piece. So working with your marketing teams, creating ways to engage through social media, through emails, communicating that you are still alive and the community is still together through a virtual race and making that available. And push notifications is one resource within the app itself, which you can set up through the CMS. All right, so moving forward. All right, so now is the case where we're using doing the virtual app and we want to include results. So very similar, again, we're building that event app and feel free to contact any of the account managers, myself, Alex, or Pamela, and we'll happily guide you along. Raquel and Dan are also here Monday through Friday to help us to get you set up. And definitely with the first few, if you haven't used the event app in any way, or even the Sporthive app in past, we'll happily walk you through. That way you can feel more comfortable. Then you're sharing that information again. Communication is key. That's what this is all about, engagement. Your runners go out and run, and then you need to have your results submission platform. So we had addressed those a little bit earlier. We called out a few options that might be available to that for your athletes to submit their times through a form. It's always great if they have pictures as well as picture proof. And then finally, you compile those submissions and organize the results. And then there's a few ways you can go about the results. So some of you may choose to post those results on your website. We have our Sporthive page, which through the event CMS, you can easily upload the results and then house results available for your athletes to access. And then if you are using one of those third-party registration sites, they typically do also have a nice packaged results page. So you may want to post it there. And you could do, just one of those, or I've seen people do all three options. All right, next slide. Okay. And so just to kind of summarize, so this is really a one-for-all solution. Sporthive Virtual is a tool for you to use where you bring together all the pieces of your virtual race. So your registration platform, the event website where they're going to find all the event info about the event. Even if it's just been rescheduled, you might want to use this for that reason, to communicate through push notifications. While people are on their phones, we're spending a lot of times on our phones these days, more than usual, creating that engagement with people, creating a place for people to easily access the place to submit their results. I've seen in most cases, the place that they go to register is not the same platform that they're necessarily submitting their results, just because we're not used to having people, usually it's our timer that creates the results and provides them to us, not the individual runner, though in many cases I'm sure they wish they could, because they like to tell us that our times are wrong. And then finally, it's compiling through all of that, going through all of those results. If you're going to do age groups, maybe you have some awards that you're going to mail out to people, publishing those results, and then going that next step to get everybody, maybe there's a medal or shirt that they've earned by completing the virtual run. All right, and next slide. All right, so just a few possible applications to touch base on here. So obviously, if you're going virtual for the first time, or one of your races is still kind of on the fence, definitely you want to present this as an option. You want to weigh all the different options before you kind of go ahead and cancel an event. I know that people have been kind of getting ahead of it and made changes a little bit further than what our governments are saying. But we're just trying to be proactive. I think it's good to just let people know that virtual is an option if you haven't done it before, or even if you haven't used a MyLapse app before. It's a great tool for communication and creating engagement. Ultimately, we hope that with this, you can preserve some of what you have on race day. Next, this can be an addition to an existing series app. So, just even on the Mudhen race that we mentioned earlier, Delmo has a series app, so this could just be an addition to the series app that they've been using in the past few years. So just kind of simply adding to it. And then, of course, a few of you do have a timer app where you house all of your events throughout the year. You absolutely can add this to that roster of events. So we'd be happy to help you with that as well. And if you've used it before, I think you'll find it's relatively easy. It's just a matter of talking to your events, your team, and building out the right platform. And of course, we're here to help that. All right, and then the last slide. Yeah, so this is just highlighting again our potential customers. So some events have canceled already. A lot have postponed. The ones that have postponed, this still might be a great add-on as they weigh on how can we get more people engaged with our event, whereas maybe that date doesn't necessarily work for them. Those that have canceled, this is a way to still host your event, still create engagement, and still give some value back to your runners. Whereas now, obviously, the current pandemic has canceled the event. New customers, love to work with you guys. And those of you that are timers and are looking for a way to offer a solution to maybe a new customer. So if you have some competitors, a lot of non-MyLapse timers don't have a solution. So this is a great solution. You may be in close conversation with that race you've been talking to for a few years. Maybe this is something you can offer to them. If you need us to join the conversation and you'd like us to present with you, definitely reach out to your account manager and we'll be glad to help with that. All right, next. Okay, and then last but not least, this is definitely the important question, is what's the pricing? So the list price is $5.99. It's available to events that are going virtual and do not have an app at this time. It does not apply to single events who have a full event app. So I know that that's probably a question for, and it was definitely in the registration, people that are using apps, or maybe they signed up to do an app before this all started happening. We would just encourage that you reach out to your account managers, reach out to Dan and Raquel, and let's have a conversation on that. Ultimately, we want to help you. We really want to help keep people engaged at all of your events. So definitely reach out to us. And then, of course, lastly, if you have a timer app, I would encourage you to offer this to all of your events. You have a resource that is, is a fixed cost to you, and you can certainly create this for all of your events. All right. And then we have another poll we'd like to do with you. So I'm going to put that question up. Now, again, I know that we have a kind of a mixed group here. We have some events and we also have some timers, but just want to find out if you feel like you have the information you need. Do you feel like you can take the virtual app and sell it to your event or your team over at your race, yeah, so do you feel like you have all the tools after this call? And also during this time, while this poll's open, if you have questions, feel free to drop them in the questions. We definitely hope that we've addressed all the questions you submitted before. We definitely want to address those now. And then if you aren't able to get them to us, we're all available. You can call the MileApps office and it rings on all our phones. So we'll definitely make sure that your question is answered. Okay. See, people are still voting. 75%. Okay. Okay, and these are the results. So to be honest, this is this is all very new for all of us. So it seems like 34% of you do feel like you feel more comfortable. 23% of you don't, and that's understandable. We definitely want to help you through it. So please, please, please reach out to us directly and let us know. Let's have a conversation. Let's jump on a call, or like I said, drop your questions into the questions here. And I see a few did come through. And we want to work with you to make sure you're comfortable. And then those of you, a majority of you said you're not sure yet. Again, this is very, very new. Maybe we do have a few webinars planned in the coming weeks. One of those will certainly touch on how do you set up your event in the event CMS. So hopefully we'll address it at that time, but if you would like to have those conversations and the specifics of exactly what you are looking to, what are those lingering questions that you just need to have a brainstorm session with us, definitely give us a call. And our office is open tomorrow, so we'll be available, and we'll address those. And I see some questions coming through, so I'll get to those in just a second. Okay, and if you want to go to the next slide, Raquel.
Yes, we have one question from Tom. He's asking the $5.99 a one-time, yearly, or by event?
Oh, that's a great question, Tom. I'm sorry I wasn't more clear. So that is $5.99 per the event. So for each event that you're working with, it'll be $599. But let's look at your roster of events that you think you can get on board. Let's have a conversation. Let's see what we can do. Ultimately, like I said, we want to make sure we serve our events well and give them great service. So give us a call. We'll see what we can do to help that out, or how we can best explain that cost to your event. Let's see. The question came through, is there any plans to develop new features like automated results? When it comes to virtual races, because our core business is in timing, there's no plans to, like I mentioned before, you're still using a third party essentially scoring, right? We still need to have that extra piece outside of MyLabs for competitors to submit their results. We had talked about doing either Google Forms or using what Race Roster, Run Signup, Strava, et cetera, are offering, or even MTech and Domo Sports. So ultimately, that piece of it is not being built out as of right now, because hopefully after this is all said and done, we'll all get back to racing and we'll be using our bib tag decoders, pro chip decoders, and back to our standard scoring. Let's see, I saw another question. It's good here. Eric Opdyke asked, it appears to only have one distance/time. Will it be available for multisport? Yeah, so I've seen actually some really interesting things people have been doing with multisport. For, I think the most feasible is duathlon at this point. Triathlon, if you have access to a pool, I'm very jealous. But if you are able to do a full triathlon, I think that's awesome. Ultimately, that question is, it comes down to whichever platform you choose to use for your submissions. And then I would also pose the question is, if you're doing multi-sport, do you want to have those three different, let's say you're doing a triathlon, do you want to have that section for someone to put in their swim time, their run time, and their biking time as well? It'd be interesting. I've kind of laughed to myself thinking about people doing transitions in their front yards, having, like the kids holding the bike ready as they're coming through to transition onto the bike. Definitely have to have your support team. But ultimately, I think that question of, whether we're flexible to whatever event type. There's even been the question earlier, because we work with motorized, our European market, they asked about karting. And so someone has the idea to use the virtual app for karting events. So we're flexible. It just comes down to whether the platform you choose for submitting the results on an individual basis can accommodate multi-sport.
We have a question from Andy Garcia. We will share the presentation. It's also being recorded, so you will get that in a couple of days, I think.
Okay, and then Jose Rivera had the question of, if the race already has an app, what's the cost to them? In that case, there's probably been a discussion about the event app cost. In that case, reach out to Pamela, and we will work with you to, as things have changed, we'll work with you to accommodate that specific question. For Andy, you were asking, where can you find this up on our page, our website? We'll send you guys all a link with access to this information. Okay, good question here actually from Santiago, and that is, can I as a timer edit, delete, or fix a submitted time which makes no sense? Maybe a cheater or someone by mistake submitted an impossible time. I already accused Mike Schmitz of being a cheater at a virtual race earlier today. But yeah, so I mean, again, that's kind of outside the world of the virtual app, and ultimately that's where you work as a timer to take that data that was submitted, and you know, if that person says they ran, you know, a 3-minute mile, we know that's impossible or hasn't been done yet. So we want to edit that out. So that's where as a timer, we're doing the work for our events. And that's the real value in all of that data sorting. So, you know, we tend to do that as timers. We're working with a lot of data, not just times, but also registration data. So this is where, you know, everything we do behind the scenes beyond just timing a race is coming into play. So you as a timer will need to, with those submitted times, go through and look at what doesn't really make too much sense. One thing to keep in mind is there really is no way to police these times. A good example is I was having a conversation earlier today just about, you know, people which might lie about their times. It really is a little bit of honor roll system. Garmin and Strava both allow you to submit manual times. So if someone wants to go and say that they won the race, you know, they could have also gotten in their car and created a fake, you know, so ultimately there is a little bit of honor that goes into this, but, you know, that's not, and while that's very important to preserve the integrity of the race aspect of that, that's why we have MyLabs equipment out on course, because it helps to ensure that those times are accurate. Unfortunately, in a virtual environment, that's just not possible, but we're keeping that competitive spirit alive. So if someone decides they want to go and cheat, that's ultimately falls on them, and you'll have to do a little bit of policing, make some decisions on the event side as well.
Yeah, that's more common on races that have monetary gifts or awards.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
We have another question from Eduardo. Yes, you can add these types of events to an already existing timer app.
And then Andy had the question of how can we keep people that are I think the question is, he was asking Raquel if someone's running as a bandit. Is that right?
Oh, in how do you call it? The treadmill.
Okay. So yeah, so Andy, so if someone's running in a treadmill, then ultimately that would count. So I think it's fair to say in that scenario, someone would just take a picture of the time, you know, just the screen on the treadmill and submit that to you. Okay, so we got a question from Ale, and it's saying, so the question is the runner number of every participant linked to their proof? Can the app know if the evidence corresponds to a participant who's not registered already? So that's where there's a little bit of data management that comes into play. So that all lives outside of the MyLabs virtual app. It's going to live in wherever you choose to aggregate your submissions of time, and then you'll need to correlate those back over to your registrants. So, you know, there's kind of, I think there's two types of virtual events that are going around. There's the free virtual events where it's just creating engagement in that community. There's also virtual events that are paid. where people are receiving a bib, t-shirts, medals. They may have paid for that before COVID-19 was very real in America. So in those cases, I would say if someone is paying for registration, I've seen platforms that you can have them enter a bib number that they would only receive when they register. So they would have to provide that bib number. And then ultimately, as the timer, you'll need to cross-reference that with the times received. Again, having that bib number does help, because then you can easily cross-reference your bibs assigned in registration with the times that you received in the results, and then easily pick out those that were not registered and eliminate them from the results. All right, from Jeff Sparks, we have, would your event start on a specific day and time, or could people run any time or period of, say, 2 weeks or 1 month? That's a great question, and that comes down to the individual event. So I have seen with, I believe with Cherry Blossom, the event was supposed to be on April 5th, and they chose that you had to run on either April 4th or 5th, the weekend of the event, and submit by the end of the day on the actual race day to be counted for the results. That kind of ties in back to what we were saying earlier about allowing people to submit multiple times. I know on our internal MyLaps employee race, there's going to be a leaderboard, and then basically we're just across the series of a few weeks, we're going to chase each other's times and try to beat each other on that distance. So it really comes down to, you can create a longer window where people can run and submit their times. Ultimately, the goal is creating engagement, exposure for your sponsors, engaging with the community, creating energy out there during these difficult times. And ultimately, it comes down to, being your choice. I think it's kind of fun, the idea of doing a longer time period and showing those results updated in real time, because then people can see, and then maybe the next day they go out there and try to drop a few seconds off their total time. It does, it's really down to you and your team making the decision with the event of, okay, does it make sense to make this longer so that we have that engagement across a longer period of time, right? And giving even more exposure. And then similarly, there's the very competitive side where you could say, okay, you have to run on these 2 specific days, giving them maybe a chance that maybe one day the weather is not so great. So one of those 2 specific days they have to go run, and then everybody sees their results at the same time. So that comes down to your individual choice. Jeff, if you want to talk more on that, definitely give me a call. All right.
Anyone has any more questions? You can also click on the hand button on the webinar, raise your hand, and we can unmute the mic.
I have a question from Blaine Lamb, and it says, if we have our own app and purchase the virtual app feature, will the app look like our app, or will it look like the Sporthive look? So that's a great question. So if you have an existing app, at this point, it is relatively easy for us to convert your existing event into a virtual app, or if you have a series app or timer app, it's very easy for us to add a virtual app and keep all of your branding. If you're currently looking, you don't have any MyLaps apps, and you're looking to add an event app, then it's a little bit more of a process to get to that level. So the Sporthive app is really the best, quickest solution that we can offer. That's a very short answer, but I would say the best thing to do at this point is, reach out to your account manager or Dan or Raquel, and then we'll walk you through what that looks like. All right. And then just a quick little question. We want to know what you guys have been up to. I'm going to throw another poll up. So, you know, we've had some free time in the last few weeks. In the last few weeks, did you exercise? Did you do more exercise in these weeks than in past months? Yes, no, about the same as usual. And you know, for those of you that are just going crazy at home, does house remodeling count too? Anybody working on some at-home projects? I think one of my favorite things I've seen out there on the internet is all of those things that we said, oh, well, I don't have time for that. This is definitely, that excuse just went out the window. Okay, and most of you have voted. Let's share the results here. All right, so yeah, a bunch of you, about a third of you are out there getting some extra miles. You probably have gotten more miles than you have in a while, as I have. Those of you that haven't, that's good too. I hope you're still getting out and getting some fresh air. I know it can be hard to be at home or in your space all day. Same as usual, great. And those of you that are doing house projects, send us pictures. We want to see what you guys have been up to. You know, if you post on the on social media, tag MyLabs_US. We definitely want to see what you guys have been up to. And then finally, so this is one of a longer series. So we are starting our MyLabs webinars. I think the intent is we should be doing these about weekly. So this is the start of MyLabs Bootcamp, get you guys trained so that once we are back to hosting races, you feel comfortable and ready to go. You know, outside, this will cover various topics. We touch just on the virtual app here, but we will touch, you know, event CMS, which is going a little bit more in depth on this. We're going to talk about runner tag, which you may have learned about recently. So some of those services, but we'll also go into things like timing and scoring, talking about hardware. We're working to finalize dates and the schedule. So keep an eye on your inbox. We'll get that to you soon. But if there's some topics that you really want to take advantage of, you know, we can do one-on-ones as well. So reach out to, again, your account managers. If you don't know who your account manager is, if you're in Central Caribbean or South America, that's Pamela. If you're in west of Ohio down to Mississippi, that is Alex. If you're east of Ohio to Mississippi in the US or Canada, that will be myself. So reach out to us and we'll get you trained, but we'll be hosting these webinars to make sure you have the resources. Feel free to also share and welcome your staff. So this is not just for you guys as the kind of leads on your in your timing companies and in your event companies. If you want to get your staff engaged, feel free to share the link with them. We'd love to hear from them as well.
Yep, so that was all for today. Thanks everyone for joining in. And hopefully this was helpful for your business.
Thank you guys. Take care of yourself. Be healthy.